Hey guys, tonight we are going to dive deep into the ancient Maya. A unique way of looking at time, a view that isn't quite like the tick-tock of your average clock. Imagine time not as a straight line, but as a never-ending circle, looping and intertwining life, death, and everything in between. You're probably thinking, oh great, so we're stuck in a loop forever. Well, in a way, yes, but that's what the Maya believed. Time for them was an endless cycle, repeating itself in patterns that shaped every aspect of their world. It wasn't just the seconds, minutes, and hours that mattered, it was the grand rhythm of life itself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, why not share where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world? Always fun to know how far this journey stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Maya didn't view time as a simple, linear progression like we do today. For them, everything was cyclical, repeating in perfect harmony with the universe. Picture a giant wheel each turn bringing life, death, and rebirth. The world, to them, wasn't a place bound by days and months, but by vast cosmic patterns that governed everything. From the rise and fall of civilizations to the seasonal changes in nature. This way of thinking was deeply ingrained in the Maya culture and belief system. Now, the idea of cyclical time isn't entirely foreign to us. You might recognize some of it in Eastern philosophies, like Buddhism, where life and death are seen as part of an endless wheel. But the Maya took it to a whole new level. Their understanding of time wasn't just spiritual or philosophical. It was practical, woven into their very daily lives. Imagine every event, from the birth of a child to the planting of crops, being dictated by the rhythms of the cosmos. You can almost hear the clock ticking in the background. But for the Maya, it wasn't a clock at all, it was the heartbeat of the universe. Historians still argue whether this belief in cyclical time helped or hindered the Maya. On the one hand, it gave them a deep sense of connection to the natural world and the divine. On the other, it might have made them fatalistic about the future. After all, if everything repeats, what's the point of trying to change things? That's a question that's been debated for centuries. For the Maya, this cyclical view of time was evident in every part of their culture, from their grand city planning to the very way they approached their spiritual practices. Time wasn't just a passive force for them. It was an active, living entity, one that they needed to honor and work with. They believed that the forces that shaped the cosmos weren't just distant and unreachable. They were intimately tied to human existence, the rise of a new ruler, the arrival of a new season, the planting of crops. All of these events were seen as echoes of cosmic cycles. The belief that life itself was a cycle was so ingrained that even the deaths of kings weren't just personal tragedies, they were cosmic events, important moments in the eternal rhythm of the universe. This idea was encapsulated in their understanding of the long count calendar, a sophisticated system that tracked both short-term and long-term cycles. Every year, month, and day was linked to a larger cosmic pattern, almost like the ticks of a celestial clock, but much more complex. The Maya saw their world as a series of repeating patterns, and each cycle brought the chance for new life, new events, and new chances to align with the cosmos. It might seem strange to us today, but for the Maya, this was how they understood their place in the universe. They didn't see themselves as isolated individuals, but as participants in an ongoing cosmic performance. The idea that everything was part of a larger, interconnected cycle gave them a sense of purpose and an understanding that even their smallest actions were part of something much bigger. The great kings, the scribes, the farmers, they were all players in this grand cosmic narrative. The Maya's cyclical view of time wasn't just about the past. It was a lens through which they viewed their future as well. By understanding the cycles of the universe, they believed they could predict what would come next. And although history shows us the Maya had an incredible understanding of the stars and the heavens, We also know that their belief in cycles didn't always protect them from the inevitable. The collapse of many of their great cities could be seen as part of the cycle of rise and fall that they so deeply believed in, but they didn't view this as the end, just another chapter in the endless circle of time. As we move forward in tonight's journey, we'll explore how this view of time played into their myths, their daily lives, and even their grandest creations. But for now, just sit with the thought of how different it would feel if you looked at life as a series of cycles, where each beginning and end is just one turn of the cosmic wheel. Let's step deeper into the heart of the Maya belief system. Picture yourself in a jungle, thick with the sounds of life-chirping birds, rustling leaves, and the ever-present hum of nature. It's here, in the dense forests of ancient Mesoamerica, that the Maya created a vast mythology around their understanding of time. But before we get tangled in the trees, let's talk about the mythological beginnings of this cyclical universe. The Maya creation myths are as rich and vibrant as the jungles themselves, filled with gods, chaos, and the struggle for order in their world. The gods weren't just distant beings, they were active players in the creation of everything around them. They shaped the world from chaos, using their divine power to carve out the cosmos. For the Maya, the world was born from tumultuous beginnings, much like a storm clearing to reveal the calm after. The Papalva, the Maya's most important creation myth, tells the story of the gods' struggle to bring order to a chaotic, flooded world. The first gods tried to create life, but their efforts failed. The animals and plants they made couldn't speak, so they were of little use to the gods. They needed something more, something to truly honor the gods and show their divine might. The gods then attempted to create humans, but even their first creations, the animals, were deemed weak and incapable of worshiping the gods properly. It was only after several failed attempts, including the creation of beings from mud and wood, that the gods created the first true humans, made of maize dough. Yes, you heard that right, the gods used maize, the very foundation of Maya life, to craft their ideal creation. Historians still argue over whether this focus on maize as the substance of life was symbolic or practical, whether it was a spiritual metaphor or reflection of the Maya's reliance on corn as their main staple. Whatever the case, it was a powerful symbol of life and rebirth for the Maya, reinforcing the idea that life was cyclical, as the earth itself nourished and was nourished by the maize that they grew. And this is where the cyclical nature of time comes into play. The creation of humans from maize was just one cycle in the ongoing chain of existence. The Maya believed that life, death, and rebirth were all part of this divine rhythm. Even after death, the spirits of the ancestors returned in cycles, influencing the living world in ways both subtle and dramatic. The gods themselves were intimately connected to this idea of cycles and the natural world. The Maya believed that their gods lived not just in distant heavens, but in the very earth they walked upon. For example, the god Itzamna, one of the most powerful deities in the Maya pantheon, was associated with the sky and the earth. He represented the duality of life, the beginning and the end, the day and the night. Itzamna and other gods embodied the constant cycles that define the Maya's worldview, their lives constantly shaped by the forces of the cosmos. What is particularly fascinating about Maya creation myths is how they reflect the Maya's understanding of the world. They didn't just see life as something happening in a vacuum, but as something embedded in a wider, ever-turning cosmic wheel. Every action, every ritual, and even the very crops they planted were seen as part of this ongoing creation. It wasn't just a one-off event that happened long ago. It was a continual process of transformation and renewal. And with each turn of the cycle, the Maya believed the gods were watching and participating, guiding and shaping the course of human history. This ties back to their deep respect for nature, where everything had a purpose and a cycle to fulfill. The rain that fell, the crops that grew, and even the movements of the stars were seen as interconnected moments and a divine cycle. For the Maya, the physical world wasn't just a backdrop to their lives, it was an active participant in the ongoing creation of the cosmos. Just like the gods, the natural world was always in flux, constantly moving through cycles of life and death, creation and destruction. And in this cyclical view of existence, death wasn't the end, it was just another phase in the endless circle. This philosophy brought a certain peace, a feeling that nothing was ever truly lost. When someone passed away, they weren't gone forever. They were simply entering another phase in the grand cosmic cycle, awaiting their rebirth. This belief in the continuity of life was reflected in their tombs, their rituals, and their respect for their ancestors, even in death. The Maya believed they could remain connected to their loved ones and ancestors, that the cycle of life would bring them together again. Of course, there's an intriguing debate about how literal or symbolic these beliefs were. Some scholars argue that the Maya's idea of rebirth and continuity was more a philosophical framework than a belief in literal reincarnation. Still, the way the Maya structured their society, their rituals, and their daily practices suggest that they deeply believed in this cyclical process, seeing death as part of an ongoing cosmic order. It wasn't about escaping the cycle of life, but about aligning with it, working in harmony with the forces that govern the universe. So, as we keep moving forward on this journey through the Maya's understanding of cycles, remember this: to the Maya, life was never about the end of something. It was always about the continuation of a cycle, a never-ending dance between creation and destruction, life and death, in a way. This belief gave them a sense of comfort and understanding that nothing ever truly ends. It's just part of a larger, eternal rhythm. Now, let's take a deep dive into the underworld, the shadowy, mysterious realm known as Xibalba, a place that was central to the Maya's understanding of life, death, and rebirth. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a dark abyss, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. You're standing on the threshold of the unknown, where the veil between life and death is thin, and everything is subject to the cosmic cycles that govern the universe. This is Xibalba world of mystery, danger, and, yes, eventual rebirth for the Maya. The underworld wasn't a place of torment like the one described in many Western religious traditions. It wasn't a place of fire and brimstone, but instead a realm full of challenges and trials, a mirror to the struggles of life itself. This idea of a testing ground for souls was a central part of the Maya worldview. The underworld wasn't just a place you went to when you died. It was a vital component of the life cycle, where souls traveled before being reborn into the physical world. The Maya believed that death wasn't the end of existence. It was just one step in a continuous journey. In the Bapalva, one of the most important Maya texts, the hero twins Hanapu and Zbawang journey into Xibalba after being summoned by the gods of the underworld. But instead of being punished or forever lost, the twins must navigate a series of trials and tests to prove their worth. Each trial represents a different aspect of life's challenges: the loss of control, the struggle against fate, and the constant dance with death. Their journey through Xibalba mirrors the human experience. Everyone must face trials, confront darkness, and emerge stronger. Historians still argue whether the Mayas saw the underworld as a metaphor for the inner struggles of the soul or as a literal realm. Some believe that Xibalba was more symbolic, representing the psychological and spiritual journey of the soul. Others believe it was a real, tangible place that the souls of the deceased traveled through on their way to rebirth. Whatever the case, the trials of Xibalba were seen as essential to the process of death and rebirth. Without passing through this dark underworld, there could be no true renewal. The Maya also believed that the gods themselves had to descend into Xibalba just like the souls of the dead before they could rise again. The hero twins' eventual triumph over the gods of the underworld was a symbolic victory that mirrored the cosmic cycle of life, death, and rebirth. In this way, Xibalba was not just a place of death, but a necessary part of the larger cycle of existence, a stage where transformation could occur. Just as crops must die to be reborn in the next season, so must souls pass through Xibalba before they can return to the light. Interestingly, the Maya didn't view death as a finality, but as a transition. Their rituals around death were designed to ease this transition and ensure a smooth journey through the underworld. They practiced various rites, such as offering food and gifts to the deceased, to ensure that their ancestors could successfully navigate Xibalba and achieve rebirth. Death wasn't feared. It was a passage, a necessary part of life's grand cycle. The Maya saw the dead as being still connected to the living, their spirits lingering on in a world just beyond our own, waiting to be reborn. This brings us to another fascinating aspect of the Maya belief system, their view of ancestors. In the Maya world, ancestors weren't distant, irrelevant figures. They were integral to the cycle of life. The deceased were believed to continue, influencing the world of the living, guiding the living through their journey, and helping them navigate the trials of life. Ancestors were seen as protectors, spirits that could intervene in the world to ensure that the living stayed in harmony with the cosmic cycles. It was common for Maya rulers to honor their ancestors by offering sacrifices or performing rituals that ensured their spirits remained powerful and connected to the living world. In Xibalba, the souls of the dead weren't lost in darkness. Instead, they were reborn, and their stories carried forward into the cycles of the living. This idea of death as a continuation of life, rather than an end, permeated Maya thinking in profound ways. It allowed the living to maintain a sense of connection with their ancestors, to believe that death was just another step in the endless dance of existence. So while Xibalba was a place of darkness and danger, it was also a place of hope, a reminder that after every end there is a new beginning, just as the cycle of time continues, bringing new growth and new possibilities. And yet, there is still some debate about how literal this journey through the underworld was for the Maya. Some scholars argue that Xibalba was more symbolic than real, a reflection of the Maya's deep understanding of the human psyche. Others suggest that the underworld was a tangible place, a realm where the souls of the dead could find their way to rebirth. Either way, Xibalba was undeniably important to their understanding of death, and it's impossible to fully grasp the Maya worldview without considering its role in their cosmology. So, as you picture this shadowy realm, think of it not just as a place of death, but as a transformative space, a space where trials were faced, where darkness was endured, and where the cycle of life and death continued. Through the Maya's understanding of Xibalba, we see that death was never an end. It was always part of the eternal cycle, a necessary stage for the soul to achieve rebirth and renewal. As we continue our journey into the ancient Maya worldview, let us shift our focus to one of the most fascinating aspects of their daily life, their intricate system of calendars. For the Maya, time wasn't just a passive backdrop to their lives. It was something to be actively engaged with, understood, and respected. Time was sacred, and the calendars they used were an expression of this sacredness, woven into every aspect of their culture. But here's the thing. The Maya didn't just have one calendar. They had several, each tracking a different cycle in the grand scheme of things. Imagine a world where your life was not governed by a simple Gregorian calendar, but by a series of interlocking cycles, each with its own rhythm and significance. The Maya had a unique way of organizing time that went far beyond the hours and days we track. Today, their most famous calendar, the Tzolk'in, was a 260-day cycle that governed religious and ceremonial life. The Tzolk'in was composed of 13 months, each containing 20 days, and it was used for everything from divination to scheduling rituals. Each day had a specific significance, and the Maya believed that certain events or actions were more auspicious on particular days. Historians still argue about the origins of the Tzolk'in and how the Maya came to settle on a 260-day cycle. Some believe it was based on the movements of the planet Venus, which the Maya tracked closely, while others think it had more to do with agricultural cycles, specifically the planting and harvesting of crops. In any case, the Tzolk'in was more than just a tool for keeping track of time. It was a way of aligning daily life with the cosmic rhythms that the Maya believed governed the universe. Your birthday, the day you got married, the day you planted your crops, all of these events were tied to the larger cycles of time, and each one held a special significance. But the Maya didn't stop there. Alongside the Tzolk'in, they used the Hab, a solar calendar with 365 days. The Hab was more akin to the calendar we use today, tracking the solar year, and divided into 18 months of 20 days each, with a final short month of 5 days. This calendar was used to mark the passing of the seasons, aligning agricultural cycles with the movement of the sun. Together, the Tzolk'in and the Hab created a system where every day was double-dated. Each day had a number in the Tzolk'in cycle and a date in the Hab cycle. This gave the Maya a powerful tool for predicting events, from eclipses to harvests, and helped them stay in tune with the cosmic forces they believed controlled the world. Now, here's where things get really interesting. While these two calendars might sound like they cover all the bases, the Maya also had the long count calendar, which tracked longer periods of time and was used to measure historical events. The long count is famous for its ability to track time over thousands of years, and it is best known for being the calendar that predicted the so-called end of the world in 2012. According to the long count, the world would reset at the end of a particular cycle. But contrary to popular belief, the Maya didn't see this as the end of the world. Instead, it was simply the end of one great cycle and the beginning of another reminder of the cyclical nature of existence. Historians are still divided on how the Maya conceived of the long count and its relation to their broader worldview. Some scholars argue that it was a way for the Maya to chart long-term historical events, while others believe it was tied to their spiritual beliefs, marking the creation of the world and the cosmic cycles. What we do know is that the long count was a system that allowed the Maya to track time on an almost cosmic scale, and it gave them a sense of continuity, a belief that the universe was constantly moving forward yet always returning to the same patterns. But what is truly remarkable about the Maya calendars is how they fused the spiritual with the practical. These weren't just abstract concepts, they were tools used in everyday life. A priest might consult the Tzolk'in to determine the most auspicious day for a religious ceremony. A farmer would check the Hab to figure out when the best time to plant crops was. And a ruler would use both calendars to time the most important events in their reign. From royal ceremonies to military conquests, the calendars weren't just tools for measuring time, they were the rhythm of life itself, shaping the actions of the living in accordance with the cycles of the cosmos. As we consider these calendars, it's important to remember that the Maya didn't see time as something static. It wasn't a line that stretched endlessly from past to present to future. Instead, they saw time as a series of overlapping, interconnected cycles, each one influencing the others. The Tzolk'in and the Hab weren't just independent systems. They were interwoven, creating a complex, multifaceted view of time that governed every part of Maya life. And this is where the debate comes in. Some scholars argue that the Maya saw time as a literal, almost physical force, something that had to be obeyed and respected. Others suggest that the Maya saw time more as a framework, a tool to understand the world rather than something to be worshipped in and of itself. Either way, it's clear that the Maya believed in the power of time, and they understood that the cycles they tracked were intimately tied to the forces of the universe. As you imagine this intricate system of calendars, think about how different our world might be if we, too, lived by such a deeply interconnected understanding of time. What if every moment, every action, was tied to a larger cosmic rhythm? A dance of cycles that govern not just the seasons, but our very lives. The Maya's view of time wasn't just a method of keeping track, it was a way of living in harmony with the universe, a belief that everything had its time and place in the endless eternal cycle. Now that we've explored the Maya's understanding of time and their cosmic calendars, let's take a closer look at one of the most fundamental aspects of their worldview: numbers. But not just any numbers. The Maya treated numbers as something far beyond mere counting tools. Numbers, for the Maya, were sacred. They were imbued with deep spiritual meaning, and every calculation, every ritual involving numbers, had a direct connection to the gods and the cycles of the universe. The way the Maya approached numbers was just as cyclical as their view of time. First, Imagine a world where numbers weren't just used for business or counting things. They were connected to the very forces of nature. For the Maya, numbers were seen as a divine language, one that could unlock the mysteries of the universe. They didn't just use numbers in a straightforward, linear fashion. They saw them as representing cosmic forces, each one vibrating in harmony with the natural world. It wasn't just about the number of days or the number of people in a village. No, it was much deeper than that. Numbers were viewed as expressions of divine balance, and the way they were used in ritual was thought to affect the very order of the cosmos. Historians still debate why certain numbers were considered so important to the Maya. One of the most sacred numbers in Maya cosmology was 13. The Maya were obsessed with this number, and it played a central role in their calendars, their architecture, and even their religion. Why 13? Well, some believe it had to do with the cycles of the moon, while others argue that 13 symbolized the connection between the heavens and the earth. Either way, 13 was considered a number that linked the divine with the earthly realm, and its importance was reflected in every part of Maya life. But 13 wasn't the only significant number. The number 20 was also sacred, with the Maya using a vigesimal-based winning number system. The importance of 20 is thought to be connected to the number of fingers and toes humans have, making it a practical yet sacred unit of measurement. The Maya also had an incredibly sophisticated system of math and geometry, one that allowed them to calculate astronomical events with remarkable precision. They used a positional number system that involved dots and bars, and they were able to perform complex calculations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. This system, coupled with their use of sacred numbers, allowed the Maya to create elaborate calendars and predict celestial movements, such as the appearances of eclipses or the cycles of Venus. The Maya were masters of celestial mathematics, and their ability to predict the movements of the stars was a testament to their deep understanding of the natural world and its cycles. But while the Maya were incredible mathematicians, there is still some mystery surrounding their use of numbers. Scholars have debated whether the Maya's sophisticated use of numbers was a purely practical system used for tracking time and organizing society, or whether it was imbued with deeper, more mystical significance. Some believe that the Maya saw numbers as conduits to communicate with the gods. Others argue that the use of numbers was more about maintaining balance and harmony within the human world, ensuring that their society stayed in alignment with the cosmic cycles. The Maya also had a complex system of symbolic numbers that were used in rituals. These numbers weren't just about the quantity of offerings or sacrifices. They were about the spiritual meaning behind them. For example, a ritual might involve 13 offerings, a number that connected the ritual to the divine. In some cases, these numbers were used to invoke the gods, and the proper alignment of numbers was seen as essential to the success of the ritual. The idea was that if you got the numbers right, you would be in harmony with the divine forces that govern the universe. Get them wrong, and chaos might ensue. To understand the significance of these numbers, think about how we today use numbers in our daily lives. We use numbers to track time, to measure things, to calculate prices. But what if those numbers had a deeper meaning, one that connected us to something greater than ourselves? What if every number we used had a cosmic purpose, one that linked us to the rhythms of the universe? For the Maya, this was their reality. Numbers weren't just tools, they were sacred keys that unlocked the mysteries of existence. As we continue on this journey through the Maya worldview, it is important to remember that their understanding of numbers was just as cyclical as their view of time. For them, numbers weren't just symbols or tools, they were a reflection of the ongoing cycles of the cosmos. Each number, each calculation, was part of a larger, divine order, and it was the Maya's job to keep that order in balance. In a world governed by cycles, numbers were the language that helped keep everything in harmony. And yet, the debate continues. Were the Mayas simply brilliant mathematicians? Or were their numbers truly divine symbols that connected them to the gods? Some scholars argue that the Maya's use of numbers was purely practical, a tool to help them navigate their world. Others believe that their numbers were sacred, representing a divine order that governed all of life. Whatever the case, one thing is clear: numbers were at the heart of Maya life, as essential to their worldview as the stars in the sky. Now, as we keep unfolding the vast layers of Maya cosmology, let's focus on a symbol that tied everything together: the sacred tree. Picture this: a towering tree, its roots sinking deep into the underworld, its trunk standing firm in the earthly realm, and its branches reaching up into the heavens. This tree wasn't just a physical object, it was the axis of the world, a symbol of life, death, and rebirth. The sacred tree, often depicted in Maya art and architecture, represented the very center of the universe, linking all three realms: the underworld, the earth, and the heavens. For the Maya, this tree was a potent symbol of balance. It wasn't just a random plant, it was the world itself. Its roots anchored it in the underworld, where the souls of the dead traveled. Its trunk stood solidly on earth, and its branches reached high into the sky, touching the realms of the gods. The tree connected everything, embodying the Maya belief that life and death were not opposites, but interconnected forces that were part of a larger, ongoing cycle. The tree was, in a sense, a living embodiment of the cyclical nature of existence. Historians still argue whether the sacred tree was purely symbolic, or whether it had practical implications. For the Maya, some suggest that it was a way for the Maya to express their understanding of the cosmos, a visual representation of their complex worldview. Others believe that the sacred tree had a more literal role in their rituals, perhaps serving as a physical axis mundi the world center during ceremonies. Whatever the case, the sacred tree was deeply important in Maya thought, appearing in many forms in their artwork and architecture. The Maya often depicted the sacred tree as a large, sprawling figure with a thick trunk and leafy branches. The tree was frequently shown with a central world tree motif, a kind of stylized representation of the cosmic axis. This tree would sometimes have a serpent climbing its trunk, symbolizing transformation and the movement between realms. The serpent, which was associated with the god Kukulkan, was believed to link the earthly world with the spiritual, and its presence on the tree emphasized the continuous cycle of death, rebirth, and the transition between worlds. The tree wasn't just about physical transformation, it was symbolic of spiritual renewal as well. In Maya rituals, the tree was used to represent the soul's journey through the three realms. Just as the tree's roots are grounded in the underworld, its trunk in the earthly realm, and its branches in the heavens, so did the Maya believe the soul traveled through these three spaces. This journey was not linear. It was cyclical, reflecting the Maya's belief in life, death, and rebirth as ongoing, interconnected processes. It was a model of existence that didn't see death as an end, but as part of a larger spiritual journey, a journey that could bring about renewal. The importance of the sacred tree extended beyond its symbolic significance in their worldview. It was also deeply tied to the Maya's religious rituals. Sacred trees were often planted in key ceremonial locations, and they were used in rites meant to connect the human world to the divine. One of the most famous trees in Maya religious practice was the ceiba tree, which was believed to embody the sacred tree itself. The ceiba's massive trunk and expansive roots made it a fitting candidate for the Maya, a symbolic understanding of the cosmos. It was not just a tree, it was a sacred conduit between the physical and spiritual realms, a powerful symbol of cosmic order. But as with many aspects of Maya life, the meaning of the sacred tree isn't fully understood. Some scholars believe the Maya used the tree to represent the cycle of seasons, with its blossoming leaves symbolizing new life and its shedding leaves representing death. Others argue that the sacred tree was a metaphor for the cyclical nature of the soulless journey through life and death. Perhaps it was both. What we do know is that the tree was integral to the Maya's understanding of the universe, connecting the cycles of nature with the spiritual and physical realms. When you think about the sacred tree, consider how deeply embedded it was in the Maya's daily existence. It wasn't just a symbol used in rituals, it was part of their larger view of the world. The tree stood as a reminder that life and death are not separate but are deeply interconnected. It offered a way for the Maya to understand their place in the universe, providing a visual and spiritual map of the cycles that govern their lives. And yet, as with all symbols, there is an underlying mystery to the sacred tree. Was it simply a powerful metaphor for the Mayas' understanding of the cosmos, or was it a physical manifestation of a deeper spiritual reality? An actual tree planted in the center of their world, linking heaven and earth in a literal sense. As with so much in Maya cosmology, the answer isn't entirely clear, and scholars continue to debate the full significance of the tree. But one thing is certain: the sacred tree was a powerful symbol of the Maya belief in cyclical existence, a visual representation of life's endless cycles of creation, destruction, and rebirth. It reminded the Maya that life, like the tree itself, was never stagnant. It was always growing, changing, and renewing, just as the cycles of the universe continued to turn. As we move further into the rich tapestry of Maya belief, let's focus on one of the most deeply ingrained concepts in their worldview: rebirth. For the Maya, rebirth was not just a concept tied to the afterlife. It was a continuous force in both the spiritual and physical realms. Rebirth wasn't just for the gods or the dead. It was a part of every living being's cycle. It was woven into the very fabric of life, influencing everything from their rituals to their understanding of nature itself. Imagine yourself standing on a lush Maya farm, surrounded by vibrant crops, each one sprouting from the soil that will one day return to the earth. To the Maya, the earth was a place of constant renewal, where the old made way for the new. In their eyes, rebirth was happening all around them in the plants they harvested, the people they honored, and the ceremonies they performed. But rebirth wasn't just about physical growth. It was also about the spiritual transformation of both individuals and the collective society. At the core of the Maya belief in rebirth was the idea that the soul underwent cycles of transformation, much like the crops that grew and died each year. This cyclical nature was fundamental to their understanding of life itself. Death wasn't seen as a permanent end, but as a necessary part of the process that allowed for new life to emerge. This belief was reflected in their art, their rituals, and their everyday practices. The Maya would often symbolize rebirth through images of young, new life emerging from the decay of the old, such as the sprouting of a new seed from the decomposing remains of the previous cycle. One of the key symbols of rebirth in Maya culture was the concept of the renewal, a spiritual energy or essence that was believed to be present in all living things. The renewal was tied to the forces of the universe and represented the potential for transformation. The Maya believed that at certain times, such as during important rituals or the transitions between life and death, the renewal would be activated, allowing the individual to experience a form of spiritual rebirth. This process was seen as part of the natural order, as every life was thought to be connected to the larger cycles of existence. But rebirth wasn't only about the individual. It also extended to the community and even to entire civilizations. The Maya saw their cities and their people as part of a larger cosmic cycle, one that mirrored the patterns of the natural world. Cities would rise, reach their peak, and eventually fall just as crops grew, reached maturity, and were harvested. But for the Maya, even the fall of a city wasn't an end. It was simply a part of the cycle, making way for new growth and new opportunities. This cyclical view of history was embedded in the Maya's understanding of the cosmos, where every rise and fall was part of the larger, unbroken flow of time. Historians still argue about how the Maya saw their own cultural cycles in relation to the larger cosmic patterns. Some suggest that the Maya viewed the rise and fall of their cities as part of a natural, inevitable process of death and rebirth that was tied to the movements of the stars and planets. Others believe that the Maya saw these events as something more purposeful, with each rise and fall representing a new opportunity for spiritual and social renewal. Whatever the case, It's clear that the Maya believed in a larger rhythm of time, one that was constantly shifting, changing, and being reborn. The most dramatic example of this cycle of rebirth can be seen in the Maya-esque royal rituals. Maya rulers often symbolize their connection to the divine through acts of personal rebirth. One famous example is the sacrifice of rebirth, in which a ruler would undergo a ritual that symbolized their own spiritual transformation. This could involve everything from bloodletting to symbolic death and resurrection ceremonies. These rituals were seen as a way for the ruler to align themselves with the forces of the cosmos and ensure that their leadership was in harmony with the cycles of the universe. In a sense, the Maya believed that every person had the potential for rebirth, not just at death but throughout their life. The cycles of birth, death, and rebirth were ongoing, and anyone could tap into this energy by aligning themselves with the cosmic rhythms. Rebirth then wasn't just a mystical or religious idea, it was a practical way of living, a tool that helped the Maya stay connected to the larger cycles of the world. It gave them a sense of continuity and purpose, knowing that death was not an end, but simply a part of the larger flow of life. The debate about rebirth in Maya culture is still ongoing. Some scholars argue that the Mayas' belief in rebirth was tied primarily to their agricultural cycles, a way of understanding the forces of nature. Others suggest that it was a deeply spiritual concept, tied to their ideas about the soul and the afterlife. Regardless of the interpretation, it's clear that rebirth was a concept that influenced all aspects of Maya life. It was a reminder that everything in the world was interconnected and that each death and each new beginning was part of the endless cycle of the cosmos. As you reflect on this idea of rebirth, imagine how different your world would look if you saw every ending as a new beginning, every loss as an opportunity for growth. This was the Maya way of worldview in which death was just a door to the next chapter, a chance to align with the cosmic cycles that governed everything. As we continue through the fascinating world of the Maya, let's shift our gaze upward, towards the stars and the heavens. The Maya were not just farmers, rulers, or craftsmen, they were also expert astronomers, watching the skies with an intensity that matched their reverence for the cycles of time. The cosmos, for the Maya, was a reflection of the rhythms they saw on Earth: life, death, and rebirth in perpetual motion. But they didn't just observe the stars, they charted them, using their knowledge of celestial movements to guide every aspect of their society. From farming to spiritual practice, to the Maya, the heavens weren't just a backdrop to their lives, they were an active, vital part of their worldview, a constant reminder that the cycles of the universe governed everything. Imagine standing on a dark night, the sky spread out above you, filled with stars. For the Maya, this wasn't just a random scattering of lights, it was a map of their existence, a guide to understanding the cycles of time. The movements of the stars and planets weren't seen as mere accidents of nature but as a reflection of divine will, a cosmic blueprint that told them when to plant crops, when to hold ceremonies, and when to expect cosmic events like eclipses or the appearance of Venus. The Maya believed that the stars held secrets to the future, and through careful observation, they could decode these messages and align their lives with the rhythms of the cosmos. One of the most important celestial bodies to the Maya was Venus. The planet Venus, known as Chiquike, the Great Star, was seen as a powerful symbol of both life and death, a guide to the rhythms of existence. The Maya tracked Venus with incredible precision, noting its appearance in the morning and evening skies, and using it to determine the timing of important events. From the start of agricultural cycles to the scheduling of major ceremonies, Venus was associated with both the goddess Ixchel, the goddess of fertility and medicine, and the god Kukulkan, the feathered serpent. This duality reflected the Maya understanding that life and death, creation and destruction, were two sides of the same coin, intertwined in the same cosmic dance. Historians still debate whether the Maya saw Venus as a literal guide to the future, or whether it was more of a symbolic presence in their religious practices. Some scholars argue that Venus was considered a divine messenger, marking important moments in the cosmic cycles, while others suggest that Venus was primarily a symbol of the eternal cycle of life and death. Either way, the Maya's ability to track the movements of Venus and other celestial bodies with such precision is a testament to their advanced knowledge of astronomy. They didn't just see the stars as twinkling lights, they saw them as active players in the cosmic drama, shaping the cycles that govern their world. The Maya also had a deep understanding of the movements of the moon. The moon, which they associated with the goddess Ixchel, was central to their agricultural practices. They used the moon's phases to determine the best times for planting and harvesting crops. The waxing and waning of the moon was seen as a reflection of the cycles of life and death, and its phases were used as markers in the Maya calendar. The moon's influence on agriculture was so central to Maya life that many of their cities were built with astronomical alignments that corresponded to lunar cycles. But the Maya didn't just watch the sky, they actively shaped their world in response to what they saw. They built massive observatories, like the one at Uaxington, where they could track the movement of Venus and other celestial bodies. These observatories were not just for studying the stars. They were spiritual sites, places where the Maya could align themselves with the cosmic rhythms and seek guidance from the gods. The E-group structures, a common architectural feature in Maya cities, were specifically designed to align with the movements of the sun and the stars, acting as physical representations of the Maya's deep connection to the cosmos. The debate continues about how the Maya's astronomical knowledge was used. Some scholars argue that it was primarily for practical purposes, such as determining the best times for planting and harvesting. Others suggest that the Maya's astronomical practices were deeply spiritual, connected to their understanding of life, death, and rebirth. Whatever the case, one thing is clear. The Maya saw the heavens as a reflection of the cycles that govern life on Earth. The stars weren't just distant lights in the sky, they were part of the same cosmic rhythm that shaped every action, every season, every moment of life. As we consider the Maya's astronomical prowess, it's worth reflecting on how our own relationship with the sky differs. We tend to see the stars as distant, unreachable points of light, useful for navigation, but not much else. The Maya, however, saw the stars as intimately connected to their daily lives, shaping their actions, their rituals, and their understanding of time itself. The stars were a living part of their world, guiding them through the cycles of existence. So as you gaze at the night sky, remember that the stars were not just a backdrop to the Maya's existence, they were active participants in the cosmic drama, guiding the Maya through the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. For them, the heavens weren't a distant, abstract concept, they were a vital, living part of the world, woven into the very fabric of their beliefs and practices. As we continue our journey through the Maya worldview, it is time to explore one of the more controversial and perhaps darker aspects of their belief system: human sacrifice. Now, I know what you're probably thinking: sacrifice? Seriously? Yes, the Maya, like many ancient cultures, practiced human sacrifice, and it played a significant role in their understanding of life, death, and rebirth. But before you jump to conclusions, let us take a deeper look at why they believed it was necessary and what it symbolized in their world. First, let's set the scene. Imagine a grand Maya temple rising into the sky, its stone steps worn smooth by the feet of countless worshippers. At the top of the pyramid, the high priests and rulers stand in solemn ritual, preparing to offer the most sacred of gifts to the god's human life. The sacrifice, however, wasn't simply about death. It was about sustaining the cosmic order. To the Maya, the gods required nourishment, and it was through sacrifice that this was provided. But the sacrifice wasn't seen as an end, it was part of the ongoing cycle of life, death, and rebirth that the Maya held so dear. Human sacrifice was closely tied to the Maya belief in cosmic balance. They believed that the gods created the world through their own sacrifices, and thus, in order to maintain the balance of the universe, humans needed to offer sacrifices in return. This was seen as a way of ensuring that the cosmic cycles, such as the cycles of the sun, moon, and crops, remained in motion. The Maya didn't see sacrifice as something brutal or meaningless. To them, it was a necessary ritual that kept the world running smoothly, much like how the planting and harvesting of crops ensured the survival of their civilization. It was about feeding the gods so they could continue to nourish the earth. But let's not sugarcoat things. These sacrifices were often gruesome, especially by modern standards. The most common form of sacrifice involved bloodletting, where rulers and priests would pierce their bodies with sharp objects and offer their blood as a symbolic offering to the gods. However, more extreme forms of sacrifice involved the ritual killing of captives, often during large public ceremonies. These sacrifices were typically performed on top of a temple pyramid, where the victim would be laid out, and their heart would be removed in a highly ritualized process. This act was believed to be the ultimate offering to the gods, the blood representing the vitality of life itself. Historians still debate the reasons behind Maya human sacrifice. Some argue that it was purely spiritual, a way to keep the gods happy and ensure the continuity of the world. Others suggest that it may have been a political tool, a way for rulers to demonstrate their power and control over both the human and divine realms. Regardless of the exact motivations, one thing is clear. Human sacrifice was a central part of Maya religious practice, deeply intertwined with their beliefs about the cycles of life and death. While the act of sacrifice may seem shocking to us, it is important to remember that the Maya didn't view death in the same way we do. For them, death wasn't an end, but a transition. The souls of the sacrifice victims were believed to travel to the underworld, Zybalba, where they would become part of the ongoing cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The Maya didn't see the victims as simply being lost to death. They saw them as becoming part of the cosmic rhythm, their lives contributing to the larger cycles that governed existence. The sacrifice, in a way, was a form of spiritual renewal for both the individual and the community. This belief in the continuity of life after death was reflected in the Maya. As view of their rulers, Maya kings were often seen as divine figures who bridged the gap between the gods and the people. In many ways, they were seen as embodiments of the gods themselves, capable of communicating with the divine and ensuring the proper balance of the universe. For a king, offering his blood in a sacrifice or overseeing the sacrifice of others was not only a demonstration of power, it was a spiritual act that connected him to the cosmic forces that controlled the cycles of life and death. The practice of sacrifice wasn't unique to the Maya. It was a feature of many ancient cultures. However, what sets the Maya apart is the way they integrated sacrifice into their broader cosmological worldview. Sacrifice wasn't a standalone act, it was part of a larger ritualistic framework that governed their understanding of the universe. Every sacrifice, whether small or large, was seen as an offering that contributed to the maintenance of cosmic balance. The Maya believed that without these offerings, the very fabric of the universe could unravel. Despite the brutality of human sacrifice, it is important to understand that it was never done out of malice or a desire for senseless violence. For the Maya, it was a deeply sacred act, one that was performed with great reverence and precision. Sacrifice wasn't just a ritual of death, it was a ritual of life, ensuring that the cycles of nature continued and that the cosmic order was maintained. Historians are still divided on the scale and frequency of Maya human sacrifice. Some argue that it was a rare event, reserved for only the most important religious ceremonies, while others suggest that it was more widespread and frequent. Whatever the case, there's no denying that human sacrifice was a key part of the Maya worldview, a way of engaging with the divine and ensuring the continuity of the cycles of life. As you reflect on this aspect of Maya culture, try to step outside of modern sensibilities and look at it through their eyes. For them, death was not an end. It was simply a part of the larger, ongoing rhythm of life. The sacrifice was not seen as an act of violence, but as an essential part of maintaining the balance of the universe, ensuring that the cycles of life, death, and rebirth would continue uninterrupted. Now that we've explored the darker side of Maya spirituality, let's zoom out and consider the grand scope of their civilization, the rise and fall of cities. The Maya were not just astronomers, farmers, and spiritual practitioners. They were also master builders, creating sprawling cities and monumental structures that have stood the test of time. Their cities, like the ancient world's most famous metropolises, were centers of culture, politics, and religion. But here's the twist. Just like the cycles they believed governed the cosmos, the rise and fall of Maya cities followed a similar rhythm, a cycle of growth, decline, and eventual rebirth. The cities, much like the crops they planted, were subject to the same forces of life and death that the Maya saw everywhere in the universe. Picture a vast Maya city, sprawling across the jungle landscape with towering pyramids, grand palaces, and bustling marketplaces. This was the Maya at their peak, an advanced society with deep knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and architecture. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan were thriving hubs of activity, home to powerful rulers, skilled artisans, and priests who conducted elaborate rituals to maintain cosmic balance. These cities were built with incredible precision, their structures aligned with celestial events, demonstrating the Maya's intimate connection to the heavens. Every pyramid, every temple, every plaza was designed to reflect their understanding of the universe and their place within it. But just as the stars in the sky follow their own cycles, so too did the Maya cities. While some cities reached their peak and flourished for centuries, others experienced dramatic rises and falls in a manner that seemed almost cyclical. One moment, a city might be thriving, its rulers strong, and its people prosperous. The next, it could be abandoned, its once bustling streets empty, and its monuments left to slowly erode. This cyclical pattern has fascinated historians for years. Why did some cities collapse? And why did others rise in their place? What were the forces at play behind these dramatic shifts? Historians still argue about the causes behind the decline of the Maya cities. Some point to environmental factors, such as prolonged droughts, which may have triggered crop failures and caused social unrest. Others believe that political instability played a role, as rival cities and factions fought for dominance, leading to internal collapse. Still, others suggest that the Maya's belief in cycles may have shaped their response to these events. The decline of a city, in their eyes, might not have been seen as a permanent loss, but as part of the natural ebb and flow of life. After all, the Maya believed in cyclical time, and just as the seasons change, so too would cities rise, fall, and eventually be reborn. The collapse of many major Maya cities during the so-called classic Maya collapse around 800–900 CE remains a topic of intense debate among scholars. Some argue that environmental factors, like deforestation and soil depletion, played a role in making the region less hospitable to agriculture. Others point to social factors, such as internal political strife or the rise of rival city-states, as key contributors to the fall. In the end, it wasn't just one factor that led to the decline. It was likely a combination of ecological, political, and social pressures, each interacting with one another in a complex web of cause and effect. Yet, despite the dramatic decline of some cities, the Maya civilization didn't disappear. Instead, it adapted and transformed. While many of the great classic period cities fell into ruin, other cities in the northern Yucatan Peninsula, like Chichen Itza, continued to thrive, and new centers of power emerged. This adaptation and rebirth in the face of collapse is another reflection of the Maya belief in the cyclical nature of life. Even in the face of decline, there was always room for renewal, for the continuation of the cosmic cycles. Just as crops are harvested, the earth rejuvenates, and new crops grow. So too did the Maya believe that even in the collapse of cities, there was the potential for new beginnings. The Maya civilization's ability to adapt to these cycles of rise and fall is one of the reasons why their legacy continues to be so powerful. They understood that no city, no matter how grand, was immune to the forces of time. Cities might crumble, Kings might fall, but the cycles of the universe would continue. In the face of collapse, the Maya believed that they could always renew themselves, aligning with the cosmic rhythms to ensure that life went on. This belief in rebirth, after all, was a central theme in their entire worldview. From the rising of the sun to the planting of crops to the birth of a new ruler, everything was part of an ongoing cycle. When a city fell, it wasn't the end of the Maya civilization, it was simply part of the greater flow of time. New cities would rise, new rulers would emerge, and the cosmic cycles would continue to shape the world. And so, as we reflect on the rise and fall of these ancient cities, think about how the Maya viewed their place in the world. They didn't see their civilization as permanent or unchanging. They understood that everything was part of a larger cosmic pattern, one that was constantly in flux. Cities might fall, but the cycles of life, death, and rebirth would go on forever, shaping the world for those who were willing to align with them. As we move deeper into the heart of Maya cosmology, let's explore the concept of duality. How life and death, light and dark, good and evil, were not opposites in their worldview, but complementary forces that existed in an eternal dance. For the Maya, duality was not something to be feared or avoided. It was a natural, necessary part of the universe, of balance that needed to be respected and maintained. This understanding of duality permeated every aspect of their culture, from their religion and mythology to their politics and daily life. It was a worldview that saw the interconnectedness of seemingly opposing forces, each one essential to the existence of the other. Imagine a world where day and night are not seen as opposing forces, but as the sides of the same coin. The Maya believed that both of the sun and the moon, the light and the dark, were necessary for life to flourish. They saw these forces not as conflicting, but as two halves of a greater whole. Just as the sun rises and sets, so does the night give way to day, each one completing the cycle. This view of duality extended to nearly every aspect of the Maya's spiritual and physical existence. The Maya gods themselves embodied this concept of duality. For example, Itzamn, one of the most powerful deities in Maya mythology, was associated with both creation and destruction. As a god of the heavens, he was a creator of life, but he was also tied to death, rebirth, and the passage of time. This duality was essential to the Maya understanding of the universe. Without death, there could be no rebirth. Without darkness, there could be no light. Everything existed in a delicate balance, and the Maya believed that it was their job to maintain this balance through their rituals, offerings, and daily practices. The Maya also viewed the human body as a microcosm of the larger universe, and they saw balance as essential to personal and spiritual well-being. Just as the cosmos required balance between the forces of light and dark, so did the human body require balance between physical and spiritual forces. Illness, misfortune, or social upheaval were often seen as a result of an imbalance between these forces. Rituals, prayers, and offerings were used to restore harmony, to ensure that the forces of duality were in alignment, and that life could continue to flow in a balanced, natural way. Duality was also reflected in the Maya's understanding of the underworld, Xibalba. As we've already explored, Xibalba was the place of death, a shadowy realm that the Maya believed was essential for the continuity of life. But death, for the Maya, was not the final end. It was a necessary part of the cycle of life and death, a transition that made way for new life. In their mythology, the hero twins Hunahpu and Xbalanque journeyed through Xibalba, overcoming its trials and emerging victorious. This journey was a metaphor for the soul's journey through the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The underworld was not a place of eternal darkness, but a place where transformation and renewal occurred. Historians still debate whether the Maya viewed Xibalba as a literal realm or as a symbolic representation of the challenges of life. Some suggest that it was more than just a spiritual concept, it was a place that the soul had to navigate in order to achieve spiritual rebirth. Others argue that Xibalba was simply a reflection of the Maya, as understanding of the struggles of life, a place where death and darkness were necessary to make way for new life and light, regardless of its literal or symbolic nature. Xibalba was central to the Maya's understanding of duality, as it embodied the tension between life and death, creation and destruction. Another example of duality in Maya cosmology can be found in their depiction of the Papalva, the sacred text of the Maya civilization. In this myth, the gods create the world and the first humans, but their creations are destroyed and remade in a continuous cycle. This story reflects the Maya understanding that creation and destruction are two parts of the same process. The gods didn't simply create the world, they also had to destroy it in order to recreate it, just as the crops are harvested and then regrow. This cyclical nature of creation and destruction is the essence of duality in Maya thought. Even in their everyday lives, the Maya practiced rituals that acknowledge duality. The most common ritual was bloodletting, where individuals would pierce their bodies with sharp objects and offer their blood as a symbolic sacrifice to the gods. This act of sacrifice was seen as a way to balance the forces of life and death, as the blood symbolized both life and death, creation and destruction. By offering their blood, the Maya believed they could maintain balance and harmony in both their own lives and in the universe. This duality also extended to the Maya's understanding of the natural world. The forces of nature were seen as dualistic, with every element having both a positive and a negative aspect. For example, the rain could bring life to crops, but too much rain could lead to floods and destruction. Similarly, the wind could bring refreshment, but it could also cause storms. The Maya believed that these forces had to be respected and balanced, just as the forces of life and death, light and dark, had to be balanced in the spiritual realm. The debate about how the Maya understood duality continues among scholars. Some argue that duality was a central organizing principle of Maya thought, while others suggest that it was more of a symbolic concept, used to represent the interconnectedness of all things, regardless of the interpretation. It's clear that duality was essential to the Maya worldview. It was a fundamental part of their understanding of the universe, and it shaped their actions, their rituals, and their relationship with the gods. So, as you think about duality, consider how the Maya saw it not as a conflict, but as a necessary balance. Light and dark, life and death, creation and destruction all were part of the same cosmic dance. For the Maya, the key was not to reject one side of the equation, but to embrace both and find the harmony between them. As we near the end of our journey through the Maya worldview, let's explore the crucial role that ritual played in maintaining cosmic balance. For the Maya, rituals were far more than mere ceremonies. They were the threads that connected the human world to the divine, ensuring that the cyclical forces of the universe remained in harmony. Rituals were not just for the gods, they were for the people, the rulers, and even the land itself. Every aspect of Maya life, from the smallest daily actions to the grandest ceremonies, was infused with ritual significance. It was through these rituals that the Maya believed they could maintain order in the cosmos, ensure the rebirth of their cities, and restore balance between life and death. Imagine a bustling Maya city during a major festival. The air is thick with incense, the sound of ceremonial drums fills the streets, and the people are gathered together in the plaza ready to perform rituals meant to honor the gods and ensure the continued prosperity of their community. The rituals themselves were highly structured, often involving offerings, dances, songs, and symbolic acts of sacrifice. The Maya believed that these rituals had the power to influence the gods, to align their lives with the cosmic rhythms, and to bring about the desired changes in the world. At the heart of many Maya rituals was the concept of bloodletting, a practice where individuals, often rulers or priests, would pierce their skin and offer their blood to the gods. This act was believed to be a powerful way of connecting with the divine, of giving a part of oneself to maintain the balance of the universe. The Maya saw blood as a vital life force, and by offering it, they believed they were replenishing the divine energy that sustained the world. In this way, bloodletting was not seen as a sacrifice in the sense of loss, but as an offering that strengthened the relationship between the human and the divine. Historians still argue about the extent to which bloodletting was performed in Maya society. Some suggest it was reserved for the elite priests, rulers, and other high-status individuals, while others believe it was a practice that extended to a wide range of people in the community, regardless of the frequency or the social status of the participants. What's clear is that bloodletting played a crucial role in Maya ritual life. It was a way of maintaining cosmic order, ensuring that the gods were appeased and that the cycles of life and death, growth and decay, remained in balance. The Maya also performed other rituals that were aimed at ensuring the success of agricultural cycles, given their dependence on the land for survival. Rituals related to planting and harvesting were of paramount importance. For instance, the Maya would offer prayers, burn incense, and make offerings to the gods before planting their crops. They believed that by doing so, they could ensure that the earth would be fertile, that the rains would come at the right time, and that the crops would grow in abundance. These rituals were tied to the cycles of the seasons, and the Maya viewed them as essential for maintaining the natural balance that kept their society alive. At the center of many of these agricultural rituals was the maize god, the deity that represented the life cycle of the most important crop in Maya society. Maize was sacred to the Maya, as it was not only their primary food source, but also a symbol of life and rebirth. The maize god was seen as both a source of nourishment and a symbol of the cyclical nature of life. To the Maya, the planting and harvesting of maize were not just practical tasks, they were spiritual acts, ones that connected them to the divine forces that govern the world. Rituals also played a crucial role in the Maya political system. Rulers were seen as the intermediaries between the gods and the people, and their role was to maintain cosmic balance and order. As part of their responsibilities, rulers would perform rituals to ensure the prosperity of their cities, to secure victory in wars, and to maintain social harmony. These rituals often involved the participation of priests and nobles, who acted as conduits between the ruler and the gods. By performing these sacred rituals, the ruler reinforced their divine right to rule and ensured that the cosmic forces remained in their favor. The role of the ruler in Maya society was deeply tied to their understanding of time and cycles. Rulers were not just political leaders, they were seen as divine figures who maintained the balance of the universe through their actions. The performance of rituals was one of the ways in which rulers demonstrated their power and authority, both in the human world and in the spiritual realm. The Maya believed that a ruler who performed the proper rituals could ensure the prosperity of their people and the success of their city. As we consider the importance of ritual in Maya life, it's clear that rituals weren't just symbolic gestures, they were acts of deep spiritual significance meant to ensure the continued flow of life, death, and rebirth. They were the mechanisms by which the Maya believed they could influence the gods, maintain cosmic balance, and keep the natural world in harmony with the cycles of the universe. Historians continue to debate the exact nature and scope of Maya rituals, particularly how widespread they were and how much power they held in everyday life. Some scholars argue that rituals were central to Maya society and were performed on a daily basis by a wide range of people, while others suggest that they were mainly the province of the elite. Regardless of their exact nature, it's clear the rituals were deeply woven into the fabric of Maya life, shaping their culture, their beliefs, and their relationship with the cosmos. So, as we reflect on the importance of ritual in Maya life, think about how these practices were more than just traditions. They were the tools that the Maya used to stay in tune with the rhythms of the universe, to ensure that the cycles of life, death, and rebirth continued to flow without interruption. Rituals, in the Maya worldview, weren't just about appeasing the gods, they were about maintaining the balance of the world itself. As we enter the final stages of our exploration into the Maya worldview, let's turn our attention to nature, one of the most profound and interconnected elements of their belief system. For the Maya, nature wasn't just a backdrop to human life. It was an active, living force. intertwined with the cosmos and a reflection of the cyclical patterns they so revered. The natural world was seen as an extension of the divine, with every tree, rock, river, and animal playing an essential role in the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. The Maya saw themselves not as separate from nature, but as a part of it, deeply connected to the forces that shape their environment. Picture the lush jungles of the Maya lowlands, vast expanses of greenery, dense with life. The sounds of birds and insects fill the air, while towering trees stretch into the sky. The Maya believed that every living thing, whether a plant, an animal, or a human, was imbued with renewal, a spiritual essence that connected it to the cosmic rhythms. This concept of renewal was central to their understanding of the natural world, as it represented the life force that flowed through all things, connecting everything in the universe. Just as the cycles of life and death were ever present in the heavens, so too were they reflected in the natural world. The Maya had a deep respect for the animals and plants that lived in the jungle. Many of these creatures held sacred significance, serving as symbols of power, fertility, and transformation. The jaguar, for example, was a prominent figure in Maya mythology, representing both strength and the mysterious forces of the night. The jaguar was associated with the underworld, Xibalba, and was often depicted as a guardian of the dark, a symbol of both death and rebirth. Its powerful, silent movement through the jungle mirrored the Maya belief that death was not an end, but a transition, a necessary part of the cyclical process. Similarly, the serpent was another powerful symbol of transformation and renewal. The Maya believed that the serpent, often depicted as the feathered serpent Kukulkan, had the ability to transcend the boundaries between the earthly realm and the spiritual realms. Kukulkan was associated with both creation and destruction, embodying the duality of existence. The serpent's ability to shed its skin symbolized rebirth, a constant cycle of death and renewal that the Mayas saw reflected in the world around them. Trees, too, held deep significance in Maya culture. As we've seen earlier with the sacred tree, the Maya believed that the world was connected by an axis. The tree's roots grounded it in the underworld, its trunk connected it to the earth, and its branches reached to the heavens. This symbolism was reflected in their reverence for certain trees, such as the ceiba, which was thought to embody the sacred tree itself. The ceiba tree's massive trunk and spreading canopy were seen as a physical representation of the universe, its branches touching the gods and its roots reaching deep into the underworld. The Mayas' relationship with nature was also reflected in their agricultural practices. The cycle of planting, growing, and harvesting crops was seen as a direct reflection of the cycles of life and death. The most important crop, of course, was maize, which the Maya believed was the food of the gods. Maize was sacred to them, representing both the sustenance of life and the promise of renewal. To the Maya, the act of planting maize was not just a practical task. It was a sacred ritual, one that connected them to the divine forces that govern the cycles of the universe. Historians still argue about how the Maya viewed their relationship with nature. Some suggest that their reverence for the natural world was primarily spiritual, that nature was seen as a reflection of the divine and that humans had a duty to maintain balance with it. Others argue that the Mayas saw nature in more practical terms, understanding it as a resource to be managed and cultivated to ensure survival. Whatever the case, it's clear that nature played a central role in the Maya worldview, and their understanding of the natural world was deeply intertwined with their spiritual beliefs. This connection between nature and the divine was also reflected in Maya architecture and city planning. Many Maya cities were constructed in alignment with natural features like rivers, mountains, and celestial events. Temples were built to mirror the sky, and structures were often aligned with the rising and setting of the sun, or the movements of the stars. The Maya saw their cities as living, breathing extensions of the natural world, and their architecture was designed to reflect this sacred connection. Every building, every monument, was an expression of their understanding of the cosmic cycles that govern their existence. In some ways, the Mayas' connection to nature was a form of environmental stewardship, They understood that the health of the land was directly tied to the health of their society, and they took great care to ensure that their agricultural practices were sustainable. The Maya practiced techniques like crop rotation and terracing to ensure that the soil remained fertile and productive. These practices reflected their belief in balance and renewal, as they recognized that the land needed time to rest and regenerate before it could provide new life. However, there is also evidence that the Maya's relationship with nature was not without conflict. As the population of Maya cities grew and urbanization expanded, the pressure on natural resources increased. Deforestation, soil depletion, and over-farming became significant problems in some areas, contributing to the decline of several major cities. This has led some scholars to argue that the collapse of certain Maya cities was, in part, a result of environmental mismanagement. While the Maya understood the importance of balance, they may have underestimated the long-term impact of their agricultural practices on the environment. The debate over the Maya's relationship with nature continues today. Some scholars view the Maya as pioneers of sustainable agriculture, while others see them as a civilization that ultimately fell victim to environmental overreach. Regardless of the interpretation, it is clear that the Maya's understanding of nature was profound and that their belief in the interconnectedness of all things shaped their actions, their rituals, and their worldview. As you think about the Maya's relationship with nature, consider how their worldview differed from our modern one in many ways. We tend to see ourselves as separate from nature, controlling and manipulating it to suit our needs. For the Maya, however, nature was something to be revered and respected, a vital force that shaped every aspect of their existence. In their eyes, we were not separate from nature but part of a larger, interconnected system, a system that required balance, harmony, and respect. As we approach the final stretch of our journey through the Maya worldview, it's time to reflect on the long-term legacy of this ancient civilization. While the Maya cities may have declined, their influence has not faded with the passage of time. The remnants of their culture, their calendars, their understanding of time and cycles, and their reverence for nature continue to resonate in the modern world, often in surprising ways. From the mysteries of their astronomical knowledge to the lessons embedded in their beliefs about balance and renewal, the Maya have left behind a legacy that still shapes our understanding of the world. The Maya were pioneers of many fields: astronomy, mathematics, architecture, and agriculture, but perhaps their most enduring legacy lies in their worldview. The idea that time is cyclical, that life and death are interconnected and essential to the balance of the universe, is something that continues to resonate in many cultures today. This perspective on life as a continuous, ever-turning cycle is not just spiritual, it's practical. The Maya understood that nothing in life is static, everything moves in cycles, and each cycle brings both challenges and opportunities. This view of the world encourages a deeper connection to the natural rhythms of life, a reminder that every end is also a beginning, and every death is followed by a new birth. In the modern world, where many people are disconnected from the cycles of nature, the Maya's understanding of these rhythms offers valuable lessons. Their belief in the interconnectedness of life, the importance of balance, and the need to respect the natural world are themes that are increasingly relevant today. As we face challenges like climate change, environmental degradation, and political instability, we can look to the Maya's example for guidance. They lived in a world that was constantly changing, yet they understood that through rituals, respect for nature, and an unwavering belief in the cycles of life, they could maintain balance and harmony. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Maya legacy is their astronomical knowledge. The Maya were not just stargazers, they were meticulous observers, recording the movements of the planets, the stars, and the sun with incredible precision. Their ability to predict celestial events, like eclipses, and their use of complex calendars, such as the Tzolk'in and Hab, demonstrate a deep understanding of the natural world. The Maya saw the cosmos as a living, interconnected system, where the movements of the stars and planets were directly linked to the cycles of life on Earth. This knowledge wasn't just academic. It was deeply tied to their spiritual beliefs and their understanding of time. The Maya believed that the cycles of the heavens reflected the cycles of life and death on Earth. They saw the rising and setting of the sun, the movements of Venus, and the phases of the moon as signs of the cosmic order, guiding their rituals, agricultural practices, and even the timing of political events. Their astronomical expertise allowed them to align their cities with the stars, and to create calendars that were not only tools for tracking time, but also guides for living in harmony with the cosmos. Today, modern scientists still marvel at the accuracy of the Maya's astronomical observations. Their ability to track the cycles of Venus, to predict solar and lunar eclipses, and to understand the movements of distant stars has been described as nothing short of remarkable. While we now have the tools of modern astronomy, it is humbling to think that the Maya achieved much of this knowledge without telescopes or advanced technology. Their understanding of the heavens was based on careful observation, and it was rooted in their belief that the cosmos was not just a passive backdrop to life, but an active force that shaped the rhythms of existence. The Maya's legacy also extends to the realm of art and architecture. The grand temples and pyramids that still stand today are a testament to their advanced engineering and architectural skills. Structures like the pyramids of Tikal, the Temple of the Inscriptions at Palenquet, and the observatories at Uaxtlan were not just architectural feats, they were expressions of the Maya's understanding of the cosmos. These buildings were carefully designed to align with celestial events, serving as physical representations of the Maya's belief in the interconnectedness of the heavens and the earth. The Maya also left behind a wealth of art that reflects their deep spiritual beliefs. Their sculptures, pottery, and murals depict gods, mythological creatures, and scenes of everyday life, all intricately tied to their understanding of the cycles of nature. Through these works of art, we can glimpse the Maya's worldview, their reverence for life, their belief in the interconnectedness of all things, and their understanding of time as a continuous, ever-turning wheel. But beyond their physical achievements, the Maya's legacy lives on in the very structure of their societies. The idea that life is cyclical, that everything is connected, and that we must live in harmony with the forces of nature, is something that transcends time and place. This worldview was not just a religious or philosophical belief. It was a way of life. It shaped the way the Maya interacted with their environment, their rulers, and each other. It shaped their rituals, their daily practices, and their understanding of the world. And it continues to influence the way we view the world today. In a world that often seems disconnected from the natural rhythms of life, the Maya remind us of the importance of balance, respect for nature, and the understanding that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. They teach us that life is a continuous cycle, one that requires constant attention, care, and renewal. The Maya's legacy is a reminder that we are all part of an ongoing cosmic dance, a dance that spans generations, civilizations, and cycles, all interwoven in the eternal flow of time. So, as we conclude our journey through the Maya worldview, take a moment to reflect on the lessons they've left behind. Their belief in the cycles of life, death, and rebirth offers us a powerful perspective on the world of perspective that can help us navigate the challenges we face today and guide us toward a future that is more in tune with the natural rhythms of life. As we bring our journey through the Maya worldview to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on the core ideas that we've explored together: cycles, balance, duality, nature, and time. These elements form the bedrock of the Maya civilization, shaping everything from their rituals to their cities, from their astronomical knowledge to their relationship with the earth. The Maya viewed the world not as a static place, but as a constantly evolving, interconnected system where life and death, creation and destruction, were simply different sides of the same cosmic coin. This belief in balance and continuity offered them a way to understand the world, their place in it, and the forces that shape their lives. The most striking aspect of Maya culture is perhaps their cyclical view of existence. Life was not a linear progression from birth to death, but a never-ending cycle. where each end was followed by a new beginning. This view of time as cyclical rather than linear offered a profound sense of continuity, of connection between generations and between humans and the divine. The Maya understood that life's patterns, whether the rise and fall of their cities, the phases of the moon, or the planting and harvesting of crops, were all part of an eternal rhythm. In this way, they could see themselves as participants in a cosmic dance, a dance that spanned the ages and echoed throughout the universe. This cyclical understanding of time allowed the Maya to find meaning in every phase of life, from birth to death, and to see death not as an end, but as a transition to something new. The underworld, Xibalba, was not a place of finality, but a stage in the larger journey where souls underwent transformation before returning to the world of the living. The Maya saw death as part of a larger process of renewal and rebirth, just as crops are planted, die, and are reborn each season. Their rituals, their bloodletting, and their sacrifices were all aimed at maintaining this balance, ensuring that the cycles of life continued to turn in harmony with the divine forces. One of the most enduring aspects of the Maya worldview was their deep connection to nature. For the Maya, the natural world wasn't something separate from human life. It was a reflection of the divine, a source of life and a symbol of the cycles of existence. The sacred tree, the jaguar, the serpent, and even the humble maize were all imbued with spiritual significance, representing forces of creation, destruction, and renewal. The Maya saw themselves as part of the Earth's cycles, not above them or outside them. Nature was not something to be controlled or dominated, but something to be respected and understood, a source of wisdom and balance. The Maya also understood the interconnectedness of all things between the earth, the heavens, and the underworld. This belief is reflected in their architecture, their cities, and their rituals. Every pyramid, every temple, every ceremonial site was carefully aligned with the celestial bodies, ensuring that the human world was in harmony with the larger universe. Just as the tree's roots reach into the underworld, its trunk touches the earth, and its branches reach into the heavens. The Maya saw themselves as standing in the center of this cosmic axis, where all forces came together in balance. Their extraordinary achievements in astronomy and mathematics, particularly their development of the Tzolk'in and Hab calendars, further illustrate the Maya as deep understanding of the cycles that govern the universe. Their precise observations of the stars, the movements of Venus, and the lunar phases allowed them to navigate time and space with unparalleled accuracy. These calendars weren't just tools for tracking the passage of days. They were a way of aligning their lives with the cosmic rhythms, ensuring that every action, from planting crops to performing rituals, was in sync with the universe's cycles. But as we've seen throughout this journey, the Maya didn't view these cycles as separate from human life. Their belief in duality, the understanding that life and death, light and dark, good and evil are complementary rather than opposing forces, was fundamental to their worldview. The struggle between these forces wasn't seen as a battle, but as a natural part of existence. Just as the sun must set for the moon to rise, so must life give way to death for new life to emerge. This duality is reflected in their gods, their mythology, and their rituals, where creation and destruction, life and death, are seen as the sides of the same coin, inseparable and necessary. As we reflect on these ideas, cycles, balance, duality, and the interconnectedness of nature, it is clear that the Maya had a profound understanding of the world around them. Their culture was built on the idea that everything in the universe is part of a larger, ever-turning cycle, and that maintaining balance within these cycles was essential to survival. This worldview allowed the Maya to thrive in a harsh and unpredictable environment, as they adapted their rituals, their cities, and their lives to the forces of nature and the cosmos. Today, as we face global challenges, climate change, political instability, and the erosion of natural resources, we can look to the Maya for guidance. Their understanding of balance, their reverence for nature, and their belief in the interconnectedness of all things offer valuable lessons for modern society. the Maya remind us that we are not separate from the natural world, but a part of it, and that maintaining balance in our relationship with nature is essential for our survival. In the end, the Maya's legacy is not just in their monumental achievements or their impressive knowledge of the cosmos, but in their timeless worldview that sees life as a continuous cycle, a dance between creation and destruction, light and dark, death and rebirth. It is a reminder that life is not about control, but about harmony. And in that harmony, we find our place in the greater rhythm of the universe. Now, as we drift into the quiet rhythm of sleep, remember the Maya's teachings, that life, like time itself, is cyclical, ever turning, ever renewing. And in the dance of life, we are all part of something much larger than ourselves. Finally, as we close our journey through the Maya worldview, remember that they left us a priceless legacy and how they view life as a series of cycles. Every event, from birth to death, was seen as part of the eternal rhythm of the universe. For the Maya, death wasn't an end, but an essential part of the rebirth process, a continual transformation. In nature, they saw the deep connection between humans, the earth, and the divine, where everything had a role to play in maintaining balance. The legacy of the Maya isn't just in their pyramids, stargazing, or grand wars, it's in how they understood the universe, life, death, and the connection between all things. By learning from the Maya, we realize that life isn't a race to achieve goals, but a journey of alignment with the rhythms of nature and the cosmos. In that balance, we find peace and rebirth with every step we take. May you carry the wisdom of the Maya with you, finding peace in the cycles of life and embracing the harmony within each moment. Sweet dreams, and may your journey through life be filled with balance, renewal, and endless possibilities.